Pixar has been the new Disney since around 1995. From Toy Story onward, they have reached a level of quality in terms of characters, animation, and storytelling that easily matches Disney in their prime. There is a reason Disney purchased Pixar for a whopping $7.4 billion. That's billion with a B. Because they're worth every penny. They're that good. To date, even among the films that haven't been my favorite, they have never made a bad one. But in my view, Finding Nemo represents their best work. It delivers an original story with endearing characters and a deep-seated emotional theme that stays with you to the end. None of this is new for Pixar, but where this film stands out above the rest is that it tells a deeper story than any Pixar film before or since. It has a large cast of characters without ever feeling cluttered. It strikes that perfect balance between being lighthearted and serious. It follows no formula, but remains structured, and it stays on one central emotional point even as it moves from one situation to the next. With everything that's going on in this film, it would have been all too easy for even the most seasoned writer to get lost in it all. Finding Nemo is almost perfectly written. We open with a married couple, Marlin and Coral, having just moved into a new home in the Great Barrier Reef. The two are expecting parents of some countless young fish, all of which Marlin wants to name either Marlin Jr. or Coral Jr. Coral suggests the name Nemo, which Marlin agrees to, but only for one of them. The two explore their new home and reminisce about their first meeting, and we get to know Marlin in a very important way.
So you do like it, don't you?
No. I do. I really do like it. But Marlin, I know that the drop-off is desirable with the great schools and the amazing view and all that, but do we really need so much space?
Coral, honey, these are our kids we're talking about. They deserve the best. Look. They'll wake up, poke their little heads out, and they see a whale!
Sadly, tragedy then strikes. Moments after moving in, they are stalked by a large predator.
They'll be fine. Just get inside you right now.
Marlin awakes to discover that the predator has killed his wife and devoured all of the eggs. All except one, which he names Nemo. The film then moves ahead a ways to Nemo's first day at school, which he is very excited about. Nemo has a bad fin which was damaged in the attack in the opening, a fin which Marlin has named Lucky. He prepares his son for school, but now we see a very different Marlin than the one we saw in the opening.
All right, where's the break? You feel a break? Sometimes you can't tell because fluid is rushing to the area. Now, any rushing fluids? Are you woozy? How many stripes do I have?
I'm fine.
Answer the stripe question.
3.
No! See, something's wrong with you. I have 1, 2, 3. That's all I have.
As you can see, Marlin has become fiercely overprotective of Nemo, obviously because he wants to make good on his promise to protect him. But there's something else going on here. Far more important than what Marlin is doing here is why he is doing it. The most obvious answer is that he promised in the beginning of the film to never let anything happen to Nemo, and he has obviously taken that promise to its furthest extreme. But that's not the only issue. There is something else going on here, and it's not just about Nemo. The two arrive at the school where they meet a few new people, and Marlin attempts a few bad jokes. Nemo gets to know his classmates, and they're all your typical rambunctious kids, but very friendly. They even try to put Nemo at ease as he explains about his bad fin.
See this tentacle? It's actually shorter than all my other tentacles. But you can't really tell, especially when I twirl them like this. I'm H2O intolerant. I'm obnoxious.
The class moves along to a tour of the ocean, and Marlin is left trying to let it go, which he almost does until he's informed that they're going to the drop-off. Upon hearing this, he overreacts once again and tracks them down. Meanwhile, the kids are given a tour of the ocean. This beautiful, stunningly animated ocean. What The Lion King achieved in hand-drawn animation, this film achieves in computer animation. This film is absolutely breathtaking. As the class goes on, the group of kids sneak off by themselves, eventually running into a slab of open ocean. The kids behave as you would expect, each of them challenging the other and testing their own boundaries. And finally, it comes time for Nemo to decide what the right thing to do here is.
Come on, Nemo! How far can you go? Oh, my dad says it's not safe.
Nemo! No!
Dad?
Ugh, you're about to swim into open water!
No, I wasn't
It's just a
gonna
good
go
thing I
out,
was
but
here.
Dad,
If I hadn't shown up, I don't know...
he wasn't gonna go. Yeah, he was too afraid. afraid. No, I wasn't.
This does not concern you, kids. And you're lucky I don't tell your parents you were out there. You know you can't swim well.
I can swim fine, Dad, okay?
Once again, Marlin has overreacted on Nemo's behalf, but this time, he did it in front of Nemo's friends, and at a moment where Nemo should have made his own decision. And as we saw, Nemo was going to make the right one. When faced with peer pressure, he fell back on what his father taught him was the right thing to do. Now, this seems to be a very peculiar reaction on the part of Marlin. Nemo is a genuinely good kid who is capable of making the right decision on his own. Marlin did a great job of raising him, so why doesn't he trust him? The obvious reason is that he's overprotective of him, but there's a deeper reason buried beneath that, which we'll go into later. Things get very heated between Nemo and his father, each saying things that they don't mean, until the worst happens and Nemo is taken captive. Marlin immediately braves the open ocean to try to track him down, but soon loses the boat. He questions the locals when running into Dory for the first time, who offers to guide him, but soon starts swimming off in 1,000 different directions.
Stop following me, okay?
What are you talking about? You're showing me which way the boat went.
A boat? Hey, I've seen a boat. It passed by not too long ago. It went, this way. It went this way. Follow me.
Wait a minute, wait a minute! What is going on? You already told me which way the boat was going.
I did? Oh, no.
If this is some kind of practical joke, it's not funny. And I know funny. I'm a clownfish.
No, it's not. I know it's not. I'm so sorry. See, I suffer from short-term memory loss.
Short-term memory loss.
Short-term memory loss. I remember seeing this for the first time thinking, how? How are they going to make this work? How are they going to work a character with short-term memory loss into a story and make that character consistent? As we will see, they absolutely do what seems to be the impossible. But this is the most important thing to keep in mind. We have now been introduced to all three of the principal characters, Nemo, Marlin, and Dory. And each character has one specific problem to overcome. One is physical, one is mental, and one is emotional. I don't know if that's something that the writers directly intended or if this is something that grew organically in the process, but regardless, each character now takes a journey to overcome their own unique problems. And it's through each other's help that they will achieve this, most of the time without even realizing it. Marlin is just about to give up on Dory and continue his search when the two are confronted by a fearsome shark. It looks like this might be the end for these two, but it turns out that this was all part of a hilarious 12-step program for sharks trying to get off of eating fish in an attempt to improve their image. There is a hilarious contrast between the way these guys look and the people that they are, but what's interesting about the sharks is that they aren't villains. They managed to make Bruce a threat later on by giving him a relapse in fish addiction while making it clear that this isn't who he really is. He's just a little out of control right now, although still deadly. The thing about Finding Nemo is that it has no central villain. This film is more about the journey and the lessons being learned along the way than it is about just one person or group being against another. Realizing that these guys are no real threat, Marlin explains what happened to his son, which tugs on the heartstrings of everyone in the room. As he's going through the story, he spots the goggles which were discarded by the driver of the boat. An address is on the goggles, but he can't read it, so Dory tries to help. Unfortunately, she's a tad injured after tugging on the goggles, and the slightest drop of blood kicks Bruce right off the wagon.
Quick, grab the mask! Grab it!
Oh no. Bruce.
Water. Swim away! Swim away!
Is the party over?
Nice.
Nemo awakens to find himself in a fish tank at the office of the dentist that took him. He's surrounded by other fish and various sea creatures, each with their own unique quirks. All of them do their best to try and set him at ease, but then the dentist explains that he thought he was saving Nemo and that he intends to give him to his niece Darla. This little girl has the nasty habit of killing fish virtually the second she gets her hands on them. Darla is the closest to a villainous character as we come in this movie, but she's not really a villain, she's really just a threat. Nemo looks upon what could be his fate, and his fear overtakes him.
I can't go with that girl. I have to get back to my dad. Ah! Daddy! Help me!
Nobody touch him. Nobody touch him.
Can you help me?
No. You get yourself in there, you can get yourself out.
There are two things to keep in mind here. The first is that Gil is the exact opposite of Marlin, both in terms of who he is and in the way he treats Nemo. Marlin's first reaction would be to yank Nemo out of the tube, but when Nemo finds himself in danger, Gil wants him to face it on his own. He is the first fish to teach Nemo how to deal with danger rather than just how to avoid it, which is good, but it's not good in all circumstances, as we will see. The second is that Nemo is, for all intents and purposes, getting an accelerated course in life. This is a place that is both strange and dangerous to him, and there is no one who can protect him from this. The fish in the tank do everything they can to make sure Darla doesn't get a hold of him, but this is Nemo's experience alone. His father cannot come to his rescue this time. While these are terrible circumstances, Nemo is learning about the world and all of its dangers, in a way far better than if his father had just been protecting and sheltering him from it all. Sometimes in order to learn about the world, you just have to experience it. And while Nemo is learning to be self-sufficient, he is also starting to see why his father had been so protective of him in the first place. Gil is a fish from the ocean as well, and he longs to return to it. So far, he has had one failed escape attempt after another, but he finds in Nemo a way that might get them all out, and so he and the other fish prepare to induct him into their group. Meanwhile, Marlin and Dory have escaped disaster, but unfortunately lost the mask, which now sinks into the dark unknown. Not being able to follow it down, Marlin gives up all hope, but Dory has some seemingly simplistic, yet very useful advice for him.
Hey, Mr. Grumpy Gills. When life gets you down, you know what you gotta do?
I don't want to know what you gotta do.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. What do? We swim, swim.
Dory, no singing.
Dory. I love to swim in.
Dory.
When you want to swim, you want
See,
to
I'm gonna get stuck now with that song. Now it's in my head.
With Dory's help, they manage to get the mask while unfortunately being attacked by a predator, but it turns out that Dory can read the address. And there's another important thing happening here. Dory not only manages to remember the address, she's remembering Marlin as well. There are still a few details that come and go in her memory, but these two things are starting to remain constant for her. Marlin, on the other hand, is still stuck in the pattern of doing what needs to be done without any thought to either the experience or to the others around him. He even tries to part ways with Dory and hurting her feelings in the process. He is so fixated on the destination that he can't even recognize how important the journey is or how important Dory is, until she finally points it out to him.
Hey, what's the matter?
What's the matter? While they're doing their silly little impressions, I am miles from home with a fish that can't even remember her own name.
Boy, I bet that's frustrating.
Yeah, meanwhile, my son is out there.
Your son Chico?
Nemo.
Right, got it.
But it doesn't matter, because no fish in this entire ocean is going to help me.
Well, I'm helping you.
This is something that it's taking Marlin a very long time to learn. From Coral's death onward, he has simply assumed that he's doing this all alone. But it's Dory, and soon another character, that will convince him otherwise. With Dory's help, they get directions to Sydney, but Marlin is still having trust issues. Dory was told that they need to swim through this place and not over it, but Marlin still won't listen to her and decides to go his own way. When the two run into jellyfish, an interesting thing happens. Even though the two were in danger, Marlin finally starts to loosen up and accept the situation for what it is, and he even starts to have a good time.
So, we're cheating death now. That's what we're doing. We're having fun at the same time. I can do this. Just be careful.
Yeah, careful I don't make you cry when I win.
No, I don't think so.
Give it up, old man. You can't fight evolution. I was built for speed.
The question is, Dory, are you hungry?
Hungry?
Yeah, because you're about to eat my bubbles.
This is the first time he has let his guard down and enjoyed an experience since Coral's death. And for a brief moment, Marlin comes across as the person he was in the opening. This is an important first step for the character, and it's all thanks to Dory that he was able to achieve this. Unfortunately, this comes to a halt on a somewhat tragic level. Dory has been caught in the stingers of the jellyfish, and Marlin fights to save her. This is unfortunate because it came very close to being Coral all over again, the first time he let his guard down, and it almost resulted in Dory sharing the same fate. They escape the jellyfish and see a strange sight before sinking into unconsciousness. Meanwhile, Nemo is taken to be inducted into the Tank Gang's club, but not before having to prove himself to them by swimming through the Ring of Fire, the process of which is very dangerous.
Isn't there another way? He's just a boy!
Nemo is now an important part of their group, and Gil explains to him how he will end up giving them their freedom. He wants Nemo to grab a pebble and stop the tank's filter, which will force the dentist to clean the tank and take the fish out in the process. Once they're out, they will roll out of the window and back into the ocean. Nemo is necessary because he's the only one small enough to get through the tube. Nemo does this without question, but what's important to keep in mind is that Gil decided this plan without thinking about Nemo at all. Nemo wasn't nothing to him, but the consequences of Gil's plan will shed light on what this teaches everyone involved.
Sharkbait! Oh my God! Get him out of there! Get him out of there! Help him! What do we do? What do we do? Oh no! Stay calm, kid! Just don't panic! Sharkbait! Grab hold of this! Feed me more! That's the end! Come on, Sharkbait! Grab it!
I'm pulling it!
Pull!
Gil, don't make him go back in there.
No. We're done.
As we've seen, Gil is the exact opposite of Marlin. Each character represents the opposite ends of both extremes. Marlin has been learning through this whole experience how to get a little closer to the mean, and now Gil is learning that lesson as well. It was his recklessness that nearly got Nemo killed. But more important is the fact that Nemo has now been given two very specific examples of both extremes, and in spite of the fact that this was dangerous for him, it was also a very good learning experience for him. From the moment his father embarrassed him in front of his friends, he has had something to prove, both to his father and to himself. But Gil is the example of what Nemo might become if he takes things too far, and slowly but surely, Nemo is growing as a person through all of these experiences. Marlin and Dory awake to find themselves right where they want to be, flying down the East Australian Current. Thankfully, Dory is just fine, and the two find themselves in the company of a great many sea turtles. All of the sea turtles are very impressed that they managed to survive the jellyfish, especially Crush, a surfer type who, like Marlin, is a father. Crush's son is playing with the others when he's suddenly flung outside of the current.
Oh my goodness!
Whoa, kill the motor, dude. Let us see what Squirt does flying solo.
As we had seen earlier, Gil is the opposite of Marlin, and likewise Marlin is the opposite of Gil. Crush, on the other hand, represents the mean between those two extremes. He's a good father and he's not going to let his son get hurt, but he also isn't sheltering him from anything and everything that might be dangerous. If there's an acceptable level of risk, he will let his son figure out how to do this on his own. This is the first time Marlin has had a chance to talk to another father, and he receives some very good advice.
Oh, it's awesome, Jelly Man. The little dudes are just eggs. We leave them on the beach to hatch, and then cuckoo-ca-choo, they find their way back to the big old blue.
All by themselves?
Ja.
But dude, how do you know when they're ready?
Well, you never really know, but when they know, you'll know, you know? Oh.
From the moment of Coral's death, Marlin made the decision to do all of this alone, which is a real shame because as we see here, the one thing Marlin really needed to do is just talk to another parent about some of this stuff. And Crush's advice helps Marlin to grow as a parent himself. He can start to see how letting Nemo deal with these things on his own can be good for him. But there is one component to all of this that hasn't been addressed yet, that will be the last stage in Marlin's growth. As they make their way down the EAC, Marlin tells the sea turtles the whole story of his journey up to this point, everything that he has been through and faced, all to rescue his son. Now, through this whole final act, I kept on thinking about one detail. How are they going to get this information from the ocean to a fish tank in the dentist's office? Well, they managed to come up with a great solution. As Marlin tells this story, it is heard by others who pass it along like a game of telephone, all the way to a pelican who just so happens to talk to the fish in the tank. He's already been introduced to Nemo, and so when he hears this story, he immediately knows who to pass this information to. It was a great scene, and it was just a great way to get this information there. Nemo doesn't believe that it's really his father at first, but as the pelican explains what happened, he realizes that it couldn't have been anyone else. So now he knows that his father actually braved the whole ocean just to try and save him, and he's ready to give the filter plan another shot. Bound and determined, he finally pulls this off, so for the moment, it seems that the fish have a good chance of escaping. At this point, Marlin and Dory are ready to exit off of the EAC into Sydney. After a wild ride, they come to a slab of open ocean and get lost very quickly. Eventually, they run into a little fish, which turns out to be a really big fish that gobbles them up. Sorry, mammal. This is the final stage in Marlin's transformation. It's the moment where we get the full picture of why he is the way he is, and what happened to him after Coral died. Why does he protect Nemo from everything? He made a promise, sure, but think about it. Marlin isn't just keeping Nemo from doing anything. He's holding himself back as well. Everything he's done to get this far was done thanks to Dory's help and with the advice of others along his journey. Had it not been for them, Marlin would likely have continued to stand in his own way. Why does he do this to himself? Why does he do it to Nemo? This one piece of dialogue here explains everything.
There. It's all right. It'll be okay.
No, it won't.
Sure it will. You'll see.
No, I promised him I'd never let anything happen to him.
That's a funny thing to promise.
What?
Well, you can't never let anything happen to him. Then nothing would ever happen to him. Not much fun for little Harpo.
Marlin isn't just protecting Nemo from danger, and he isn't just hiding himself from danger. He's hiding Nemo and himself from life. When he and Coral were together, things were great. They had a great new home with a family on the way, and Marlin was as happy and outgoing as can be. And it was all taken away in a second. For no reason at all. No one's fault, just a random act of life. That is what Marlin has been protecting Nemo from. Not just danger, but the possibility of danger. The possibility that anything bad could ever happen to him. But it takes Dory to make him realize that he isn't preventing bad things from happening. He's only preventing life from happening. After this whale instructs them to go to the back of the throat, which means he's either going to help them or he's going to eat them, everything that Marlin has learned along the way pays off brilliantly.
He says it's time to let go! Everything's gonna be alright!
How do you know? How do you know something bad isn't gonna happen?
I don't!
Over at the fish tank, everyone awakens to put the plan into action, but unfortunately, the plan was all for naught. Instead of cleaning the tank, the dentist simply invested in a self-cleaning device while the fish were asleep. And if that wasn't bad enough, Darla's here. The dentist tries to yank Nemo out of the tank, but the fish come to his aid by jumping into the net and swimming down at the same time. But it's too late. Nemo is caught, and Darla is about ready to shake him into oblivion. Dory and Marlin finally arrive in Sydney, only to be attempted breakfast by a pelican. But fortunately, they're discovered by the very pelican that talks to the tank fish, and he escorts them to the dentist while being pursued by a flock of seagulls. But when he arrives, it seems to be too late. Nemo has gone belly up. It's the last thing Marlin will see before being thrown out of the room. Nemo was only faking, but as far as Marlin is concerned, Nemo is gone. Soon after, Gil comes to Nemo's aid and sends him down the drain, but as far as Marlin is concerned, everything is over. He thanks Dory for all of her help and heads home. The following scene between Dory and Marlin explains why Dory is the way she is, and what having someone like Marlin in her life means to her.
Stop! Please don't go away. Please. No one's ever stuck with me for so long before. And if you leave, I remember things better with you. I do. Look, P. Sherman, 42. I remember it. I do. It's there. I know it is, because when I look at you, I can feel it. And I look at you and I'm home. Please. I don't want that to go away. I don't want to forget.
I'm sorry, Dory, but I do.
Everyone goes their separate ways before Nemo finally emerges, running into Dory. In light of Marlin's departure, Dory has completely lost her memory once again, but reading the word Sydney sends it flooding all back to her. Finally, she escorts Nemo to Marlin, and the two at long last have their reunion. One last challenge faces these three characters, and it's the point where everything they have learned all comes together. A boat catches all the fish in a net and cranks them up, but Nemo has a plan, using what he learned from his experience in the fish tank, to have all the fish swim down at once to release the net. But in order to communicate this, he has to get into the net himself, which Marlin immediately objects to.
Dad, I know what to do!
Nemo, no!
We have to tell all the fish to swim down together!
Get out of there now!
I know this will work!
No, I am not going to lose you again!
Dad, there's no time! It's the only way we can save Dory! I can do this!
You're right. I know you can.
Lucky thing!
Now go! Hurry!
Tell all the fish to swim down!
Well, you heard my son? Come on!
Dory, you have to tell everybody to
Swim down together! Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Swim down! Keep swimming!
Keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
Almost there! Keep swimming!
Marlin's emotional challenges are overcome, Nemo's physical challenges are overcome, and Dory's mental challenges are overcome. And the three finally return home together. Marlin has become far more accepting of the circumstances of life, and he finally becomes the fish that we saw in the opening. He even challenges Nemo to a race to the school. Dory sticks with the two of them, and while her memory is still a bit sketchy, she remembers them both with ease. After everything that happened to them on their journey, all three are ready to face life. And now, they will face it together. So what makes Finding Nemo better than any of the other Pixar films? Well, this one is a little difficult. Most of the Pixar films have great stories and amazing characters, and almost all of them are very original. So comparing one Pixar film to another is almost like apples and oranges, and the ones you prefer are likely going to depend a lot on you. So explaining why I think this one stands out among the others, that's just a little harder to explain for me this time. What I admire most about this particular film is that the journey was actually a bit more important than the destination. If Marlin hadn't gone through exactly everything he went through, and if he hadn't met exactly the people that he did, then this wouldn't have paid off at all. He would have gotten Nemo back, but he wouldn't have learned anything he needed to learn in order to grow as a person. It's the character growth through the experience of getting to Nemo, as well as Nemo getting back to his dad, that I love about this. Usually in the story of a children's film, the protagonist already has a good quality that no one can see or that that person doesn't believe in. But these people have all of that good stuff buried underneath their own unique traumas, and it takes this experience to sweep away all the things that are holding them back. I've realized a lot of the times in entertainment that I'm a big fan of contrasts when they're done well, and one of the things that I love about this film is that while there is a great deal of joy and wonder in it, there is also this constant undercurrent of sadness to it. Marlin is a broken fish, no question about it, and this film is all about putting him back together. The fact that they were able to do something that serious and still not make this a downer is very impressive to me. If you remember, one of my biggest problems with The Incredibles is that it tried to tell something slightly similar, but was brought down, in my opinion, by the fact that it was almost completely depressing. There were a lot of admirable story elements to that film as well, but it was somewhat derailed by a complete lack of balance. Balance is what this movie offers in abundance. They pick their battles very carefully, and they stay on point with the darker stuff without ever making this a depressing slog. Maybe it's the Aristotelian in me that is constantly searching for the mean, but the fact that they balance everything as well as they did, and the fact that everyone in this film is trying to find that sense of balance themselves and taking the bad with the good, just makes this film incredible to me. The animators and voice actors put every bit as much detail and love into the look and sound of this film as they did the story. The voice cast is simply spot on. Alexander Gould delivers a convincing voice of a child because they made the smart decision not to clean up a lot of his dialogue. Everything he says sounds genuine, awkward pauses and all. Albert Brooks has a very unique voice that you will start to associate with Marlin even more than the actor himself. And then of course there's Ellen DeGeneres as Dory, whose characterization was so good it made her whole career take off again. These voice actors take each one of these characters and transform them into instantly identifiable people. The animation is simply stunning. Everything is shown in remarkable detail, right down to the different look of the water depending on where we are at any given time. But the one thing I love about this, maybe more than anything else, is the moral. After all the incredible character development, fully realized plot elements, and a story that is very unique, the one constant that overlaps all of these things is the lesson that sometimes life deals you horrible things. But you can't shut life out just to make sure that never happens. You have to deal with the rain in order to experience the rainbow, and so on. A lot of these movies have the moral in the end about believing in yourself and following your dreams, and that is more than fine. But it takes a very unique film to tell a story about the fact that bad things will happen. But you have to learn to accept that and just enjoy the beauty that life has to offer. I guess what I'm saying is that this movie is just as good as the great Pixar films ever have been, but in a way that speaks to what I love about a good story. And that is what sets this apart for me. I can't put it in terms that are any more objective than that, I'm afraid, but one thing I can say for sure is this. Finding Nemo is most definitely the best I've seen of Pixar to date.